This week on the Baseline Podcast, we talk about Ohio State football. Primarily, we talk about the depth on the offense and the defensive side of the ball. We talk about the weaknesses they might face, the strengths they have, and ultimately how far they will go this season. All that and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Baseline Podcast, where we cover all the angles and hopefully you learn a little sports along the way. And we are back. Yes, after a long hiatus of really making any podcast videos for any of my podcasts or any videos in general, we are back and we have a special episode this week, which I'll get to in a bit, but I think you can guess what it's going to be. But before we do that, I just wanted to explain kind of what was going on. Well, if you didn't know, I got married, which is a big thing, exciting. Rebecca's actually sleeping right now because she's tired, and it's been a long week for both of us. We are both very tired, and it's also very late. And the reason why I'm doing this so late is because, well, and hopefully it'll come out the same night I'm doing it, because Ohio State plays tomorrow, or it's almost like a day and a half for me because of the hour difference, but they play, and I am guaranteeing that I will be watching it. However that will be, this guy will be watching that game very closely. And so, yeah, it's going to be a great game. We'll get into the game in a bit, but I really just wanted to take this episode of the podcast and really talk about Ohio State football, right? And some of you might say, well, you know, Ben, I love all sports. Isn't this a sports podcast? Isn't this what you're supposed to be talking about? Like, aren't there other sports you should talk about? Other things? I'm like, yeah, there are. Like, you know, how a Cedarville person that I actually got to hold a gold medal for and a bronze medal of I can't remember her name now. This is blanking me, but Norman's her last name. There you go. I can't think of her first name, which is driving me insane. But when I did a radio show for Cedarville, I got to hold a Paralympic medal. She went out and won silver. So yes, that's something that happened. And of course, you know, Ronaldo moved to Manchester United. You know, a lot of that stuff happened, which, you know, it is what it is. But it's a Ohio State football week or a Ohio State football day, depending on when you're listening to this. And so I just wanted to take some time to think about, you know, this team. Where do I think this team will end up? What do I think this team's struggles are going to be? And things like that. We're going to kind of do an in-depth look at Ohio State and my thoughts on the team this year. And then kind of look at the schedule. What is the tough games going to be? And then finally, we're going to look at the Minnesota game, which is happening, you know, tomorrow for some of you, tonight for me, or in a couple days. Oh, sorry, I'm yawning. Like I said, the yawns are back. But anyways, let's look at the depth chart here. Just because I really want to go over, as many of us know, Ohio State is always loaded, right? Like, I've been a Ohio State fan my whole life, and I feel like every year, outside of maybe 1 year, the team has talent that goes way beyond, I think, what we realize, right? And that's one of the coolest things about, I think, about college sports is, like, you know, it's so cool to see good teams play because they just always seem to have just abundance of talent and know how to use it. And so I thought I would go through kind of their offensive depth chart. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to move into the defensive depth chart, you know, and talk about the weaknesses of both, right? And maybe some of the struggles that I see. I think a big hole, and I'm just going to open up, is, you know, people are very excited about CJ Stroud. You know, I'm one of them. I'm super excited for CJ Stroud. I think he's going to be an absolute beast. I also have to remind myself that Quinn Ewers is sitting right behind him, or not sitting right behind him, but, you know, is there now, who just signed a $1.4 million NIL, whatever that deal is. He signed that, which to me is crazy. And that whole subject of college sports getting paid is for another day. But $1.4 million for a guy that's never played a down in college football. It's quite crazy. Sorry, I'm yawning again. This is not good. Hopefully I'll make it through it, Mom. I'm sorry. But yeah, let's look. So like I said, CJ Stroud, I think, it was the right choice. I think, you got to see glimpses of him. He never threw a pass, but you got to see glimpses of the athleticism. We've heard about his arm. We've heard the comparisons to Justin Fields, to some other guys. You look behind him, Jack Miller's there too. Will he stay around? We'll see. Kyle McCord, a freshman, and you got Ewers, who do they decide to redshirt Ewers, or does Miller leave and now Ewers and McCord are fighting for that backup spot? No offense to Jack Miller, but I just, a guy of his talent, why would you stay is always a question you ask. And I look at, the one thing that I'm not worried about, and I can guarantee you everyone will say that, whether you're a Ohio State fan or not, is that they're probably the deepest wide receiver. They probably have the deepest wide receiver core that I know I've seen in a long time since I've been alive. And, you hear a lot of people saying that. And when you look at the fact that you have Garrett Wilson, top 2 rounds, he's a 2-round. He's probably going to get drafted in the top 2 rounds. Chris Olave, going to get drafted in the top 15. Jackson Smith and Najigba, who in a year and a half will be also a guy that could get drafted in the top 15, top 20. You look at Julian Fleming, a guy who's the number 1 ranked wide receiver. I believe he was the number 1 ranked overall prospect. Don't quote me on that, but he was hurt all last year. He's back and healthy, fully healthy. Emeka Ibuka, number 1 receiver. He's in as a freshman. Then you have Marvin Harrison Jr., who wasn't even the highest rated guy. He wasn't even really in the top 5 or 6 wide receivers. He's the son of Marvin Harrison Sr., who we all know was one of the greatest of all time. You have him. That's just the 6 that I named. And obviously you have more, and there is more deep and more deep as you go down. There's young guys that are going to play out there. Do I think Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, do I think they stay healthy? I hope so. With them on the field, I think it's a very hard duo to keep track of. You look at the offensive line, Nicholas Petit Frere, redshirt, I believe he's a senior this year. Don't quote me on that. Thayer Mumford, who's moving from tackle to guard, and we'll get into that in a second. Harry Miller, Paris Johnson, who's a stud, who, you have to play him inside, even though he's a tackle, because there's literally no space on the outside for him right now, but he's literally that good. I mean, they've talked about this guy since high school. You see some of his highlight tapes. He's unreal. Then DeJuan Jones, my man DeJuan Jones, who, when he was a freshman, I remember we talked as Ohio State fans. Man, this dude's 6'8". He's 330 pounds or whatever. What is he going to be? What are they going to do with him? And you see him now as he outright won the starting tackle job, had to move Thayer Mumford, who's, again, one of the best tackles that we had in the Big Ten. It just shows you how deep, again, this offensive line is. Now, after that, you start getting to guys that maybe aren't as experienced. The Donovan Jackson, who's a freshman, very good player. Josh Fryer, Matthew Jones, Enoch, Viema, I can never say his last name. You look at these guys and you're like, they could be good. They will be good, but it's like they need time. And so staying healthy on that offensive line is going to be huge for Ohio State. Again, Jeremy Ruckert came out of high school as one of the best tight ends in the nation. He hasn't quite proven it yet, obviously, because of the way the offense works. He's not as targeted as much, but you move G. Scott from wide receiver, add him a few pounds, move him down to tight end. You had Cade Stover, obviously, that flipped last year to tight end. You have these guys that are solid contributors, that are solid dudes. And then you have the running back core who, let's be honest, as much as I love Master Teague, as much as I love, I think that he's going by Pork Chop now. Mayan Williams, Mayan Williams didn't have a lot of carries last year, but he showed some great burst. Master Teague, we know what he can do. But Trevion Henderson is a guy that I would make a bold prediction right now. Do not be shocked if by the end of the year in that big game against the team up north, you see him as the starting running back. He is that good. I've never really seen a freshman running back outside of maybe Dobbins have a great year. Like, we saw the Maurice Clarett's and things like that. But Trevion Henderson's one of those guys that I think could do that. So that is everything with the offense. I'm going to share my biggest fear for the offense, and then we'll move into defense right after this. So sorry about that. Battery kind of went kaput. Was dying battery, so I had to switch. Hopefully this one lasts the rest of the episode. If you're listening, you're like, Ben, that makes no sense. Well, you should watch on YouTube. It's a great place. Anyways, like I was saying, I'm going to talk about a little bit the things that I think that could be a weakness, which I know it's like saying that, an armored truck has a ton of weaknesses, because I believe that the Ohio State offense is, if not the best offense in the nation, it's in the top 3, right? I think you put Alabama, Oklahoma up there, maybe Clemson. This offense, if they play the way they look on paper, could put up 50 points, 45, 50 points a game easily. My 2 biggest concerns for the Ohio State offense, and I think a lot of Ohio State fans will agree with me with this, CJ Stroud, love the guy, but we haven't seen him in a full really action. What's he going to do? Is he going to make right decisions? Is he going to be like a Justin Fields, or is he end up going to be one of those guys where we start doubting and we throw Jack Miller in there or Kyle McCord? What's going to happen? I think we're waiting to see what happens. I really do. My other big concern is depth on the offensive line. Now, I know, if no one gets injured, then I believe this is the best offensive line in the country. If you start getting injuries, then we start wondering, what is going to happen? What are some of those kind of things? So those are my 2 biggest concerns. Outside of that, I think it's going to be a great year. So that's the offense. Let's look at the defense here before we get on to our next kind of look at things. And I'll throw special teams in there too, because I can't forget the special team guys. Defense, you think about it, you got dudes up front, right? Like you always do. Larry Johnson always has his guys. You have Zach Harrison, who I believe is going to have a breakout year and could end up being a top 5, top 10 pick if he has a great year, which I'm predicting. John Baptiste, he's back. Tyler Friday was going to be back, but he tore his ACL recently, so that's just frustrating. But at the same time, you have Tyreek Smith who will start, but then you have the 2 dudes that I cannot wait to watch play: Jack Sawyer, JT Tuilamolau. Both guys were top 3 recruits this year. Both dudes are studs. I think, and you also have Haskell Garrett. Sorry, I didn't even mention Haskell Garrett, who is going to be one of the top guys drafted next year. And Tyron Vincent, Antoine Jackson, Jaron Cage. You have depth up there. I'm not really worried. I think about the defensive line. I think as a Ohio State fan, you're never really worried. With Larry Johnson back there, you kind of know that these dudes, they're going to be ready. Whether they realize it or not, they're going to be thrown into the wolves, the lion's den, as they would say. Linebacker, that's a lot of unknown. I mean, honestly, as I've been watching the last few years, you've had that consistency. Now I don't see it necessarily. You have Mitchell, who has been here, Dallas Gant, Kavion Pope. These dudes have been here and they've made some impact. Mitchell is one of those guys I felt like just has never hit the ground running necessarily the way we would like, obviously. But I think, you have Cody Simon, who's shown he can be a stud, and Craig Young, who are the 2 projected other starting linebackers, at the Mike and the Bull. I wouldn't be shocked if Ronnie Hickman, Reed Carrico, Tommy Eichenberg, like Court Williams, like these dudes, they're dudes. Like, I think you could see this linebacking core could be really good. I'll get into it in a second why I believe they could be a weakness. And then you look at the DBs, right? Like, this is the weakness. It's what everyone points at why we didn't beat Alabama. There's a lot of finger pointing. You have Seven Banks, right? Who out of everyone is probably the guy that is like, this guy could be a top 15, top 20 pick. He has the talent. Will he succeed? We'll see. You have Cameron Brown, you have Cavazos, you have Ryan Watts, who's a huge man. I mean, he's like 6'4" cornerback. He's ginormous. You have Shaquille Johnson, you have, Cameron Martinez. I believe Johnson though is injured, which kind of sucks. That hurts the depth there. But really, you look at DBs. You have Demario McCall, who can't get any offensive looks, so he's moving the defense. Um, this is what concerns me is that yes, I think on the safety side of things, I think they're okay. You have Marcus Hooker, Marcus Williams, Ransom, Josh Proctor. Like I think they're okay when it comes to that. I'm still worried about the depth and the DBs, and maybe they'll prove me wrong. As a High State fan, I want to be positive, but that does scare me a little bit. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I'm totally wrong, and it's going to be a great year. They're going to be the best DBs in the country. Then we could prove everyone wrong. But we cannot have a relapse like we did last year. We really need to be focused on that. And yeah, and then if you look at the special teams, you have Jesse Mirko, who's from Australia. I can't wait to watch him punt. I love Australians when they punt. Noah Ruggles, he's going to be the kicker. I think they'll be pretty good. And then you're going to have some electric returners as well. My biggest worry on defense is two things, really. Linebackers, experience, depth. What's it going to be like? Obviously, you have talent, but game time experience is very important. And then the DBs, as most of us Buckeye fans are terrified of, that will be interesting. So that's the depth chart. That's what we're looking like. I'm excited to see how this team competes. I'm excited to see how this team will show up. What are my predictions? What are my thoughts? I think no one in the Big Ten beats them. And I don't say that being a cocky High State fan. I know that's what a lot of people say is like, oh, we're just cocky and I guess we don't really think about it all the way. But I mean, I look at this schedule, and you have Big Ten schedule, Minnesota, Rutgers, Maryland, Indiana, Penn State, Nebraska, Purdue, Michigan State, and then the team up north. Penn State is the one game I'm just terrified because it's at Penn State. Outside of that, I honestly don't. I don't know another team. Maybe Indiana gives us fits. They always seem to do. And I think overall, the reason why I think they'll win every Big Ten game, and I think they honestly will win every game in general. Yeah, they're playing Oregon, which a lot of people are a little like, it's a Pac-12 game, it's Oregon, but in reality, I guess I'm not as much worried because I know what this team can be. There are a lot of veterans. But yeah, I think Ohio State runs the table. My prediction is simply this. They win the Big Ten, they make the playoff. And this is where I get nervous because I feel like it's like every other year we have a Buckeye team that just can't show up in the postseason for some reason. And I believe they will this year. I have Ohio State going to the national title. As a selfish guy, I would want to say, not as a selfish guy, that sounds terrible, Ben, but as a guy who wants to believe that Ohio State will win the national title, I would definitely put them as the one that's going to win. Really, I have no idea who's going to win. I need to see a few games before I really make the decision, but I do believe Ohio State will go in the regular season undefeated and win the Big Ten championship game, probably against like a Northwestern or Wisconsin. It seems like that's always what ends up being. Like I said, tough schedule. Not really. I mean, Minnesota game is always interesting, especially on a Thursday. But you have Oregon coming up. Then you're at Tulsa, which is probably the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Me and my buddy were talking about that the other day. Like, that is just such a weird to go to Tulsa. But then you have Rutgers at home, Indiana at home. Excuse me, I'm yawning again. You have Nebraska at home. You have obviously the team up north at home. So, hopefully the team up north doesn't quit on us again this year, but who knows with them. Let's just keep on beating them up and let's see what happens. So that's the schedule. What do I think about the Minnesota game? That's what we're going to talk about as we finish up this episode of the podcast. I honestly believe that I think I think it might be close at first, mainly because you have, it's been such a weird summer and um, a weird timing to start your year off. Again, I think that you'll end up seeing Ohio State. I think really try to establish. I think both the run and the pass. I don't see them establishing one thing. I think they're going to try to mix it up and use the speed of Stroud, use the quickness, use the arm strength, finding ways to mix up with all those wide receivers. I would not be shocked if this year you see a Ohio State average 35, 40 passes a game. They have that many great receivers that can make a difference in a ball game at a moment in time. So I'm super excited for this game. Obviously here it's going to be 2 a.m. So we'll see how I do, but I hope you guys will tune in if you're a Ohio State fan, or maybe you're a fan of another team. Awesome. I just sensed that I wanted to talk about Ohio State today because, well, it is the team I support. It's the team I love, team I grew up on. And it's a big OHIO for me all the way. Never will change. And hopefully Rebecca will stay up and watch it with me. Probably not, being at 2 a.m. But super excited, and I can't wait to see what this year brings for this team. I'm going to be watching every step of the way. My goal is to hopefully do a kind of, it might be a change in the podcast for football season. We might do like a Browns Ohio State every week, kind of recap and then talk about those two, mainly just because I can. So once again, I think we'll end it there. I know it's not as long, but it's getting pretty late for me. I got to edit this still and post it. So, but anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have enjoyed it, make sure you like it, favorite it on all the streaming platforms that you have. iTunes has been weird. Hopefully we'll be able to get that up here shortly on iTunes. But anyways, I hope you've enjoyed it. And once again, I hope that we've covered all the angles and that you will have a great day. And until next time, we'll see ya.